Good evening, you're watching No Spin. I'm Nidhi Razdan. The central government's decision to rename the historic Rajpath and the Centre Vista lawns in Delhi stretching from Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate as Kartavya Path has sharply divided opinions. Now, as far as the BJP government is concerned, this renaming is all a part of the Prime Minister's larger message to abolish symbols of our colonial past. They've also stressed that the Prime Minister's been talking about duties of citizens rather than the rights of citizens. All of this, government officials say, is behind the renaming of Rajpath. The whole stress on duties as opposed to rights has become more and more common in Mr. Modi's public statements over the years. Earlier this year, he said that there is too much time that has been spent on rights and fighting about rights, and that forgetting one's duties had actually made India weak. He also said that the coming 25 years are a period of hard work, sacrifice and tapasya. But isn't a democracy essentially about the rights of citizens? Is shifting the focus to duties a deflection by the government of its own responsibilities? Our rights like liberty and equality are enshrined in the constitutions. They cannot be conditional or linked to duties. And incidentally, duties were inserted as part of the 42nd Amendment by Indira Gandhi during the emergency. So is this an attempt to seek the loyalty of citizens, an attempt to shift the narrative? Let's first listen to what Mr. Modi had actually said on this earlier in the year.
बीते 75 वर्षों में हमने सिर्फ अधिकारों की बात करते रहे, अधिकारों के लिए झगड़ते रहे, जूझते रहे, समय भी खपाते रहे। अधिकार की बात कुछ हद तक, कुछ समय के लिए किसी एक परिस्थिति में सही हो सकती है, लेकिन अपने कर्तव्यों को पूरी तरह भूल जाना, इस बात ने भारत को कमजोर रोकने में बहुत बड़ी भूमिका निभाई है। भारत ने अपना बहुत बड़ा समय इसलिए गंवाया है क्योंकि कर्तव्यों को प्राथमिकता नहीं दी गई। इन 75 वर्षों में कर्तव्यों को दूर रखने की वजह से जो खाई पैदा हुई है, सिर्फ अधिकार की बात करने की वजह से समाज में जो कमी आई है, उसकी भरपाई हम मिलकर के आने वाले 25 वर्षों में कर्तव्य की साधना करके पूरी कर सकते हैं।
Well, interesting how the narrative is being created here. Let's go straight across to our panel this evening. Columnist, journalist and author Tavleen Singh joins us. She wrote a terrific piece on this issue some time ago. We have also with us Shama Mohammed, spokesperson of the Congress, Vijay Jolly from the BJP, Ashwini Dubey, advocate of the Supreme Court, and hopefully we will be joined by Yogendra Yadav in just a short while from now. But let me take this question to you first, Tavleen Singh. What do you firstly think of the renaming of Rajpath to Kartavya Path? There's, of course, the political opposition to it, but do you see it in the context of this larger narrative that is being sought to be framed about the duties of citizens being above all else?
Well, it makes no sense, actually, because I thought that it was meant to remind politicians of their duties, because actually that road leads to the seat of the government of India. So that's not how I saw it. I thought that the whole thing about saying getting rid of the colonial past was quite meaningless, because it was Kingsway that was turned to Rajpath, meaning that that's this road that led to the seat of government. But what really worries me is this emphasis on citizens' duties, where there's no emphasis on the duties of politicians to give us those basic things without which, citizens cannot do their duty. Jobs, schools, hospitals, roads, electricity, just a chance at living. I mean, unless that happens, if they give us all that, then fine, you can say, all right, you also have some duties, but let the politician do his duty first. So I actually saw that as a reminder to politicians to do their duty.
So how do you see, why do you think that this is the narrative that's being sought to be framed? where the emphasis was on duties and less on rights? Is the government shifting the onus on citizens?
Yes, it's almost as if in the new India, there's an admission of failure on the part of Mr. Modi to say that, because we haven't been able to give you those things, it's now your turn to do your duty. No matter how much you and I can do our duty, because we come from a more privileged category of Indians, what about ordinary people? What about the duty for them to have governments that are not corrupt? What about them to have just the basic needs like clean drinking water? So, I really don't understand where he's going, other than the fact that you're deflecting attention from the duty of his government to deliver by putting the onus on citizens.
So let me take that to you, Mr. Vijay Jolly. Why duties over rights? Isn't a democracy basically about fundamental rights? These are enshrined in our constitution. And I'll just read to you what the Supreme Court has said on fundamental rights. They are guaranteed, they are sacrosanct, and the constitution will lose importance if fundamental rights are not protected. So why are fundamental rights such a dirty word now?
You see, none's fundamental rights are being violated or infringed upon. And of course, the era of the kings and the rulers is over. Earlier, it was the Kingsway, built and named after and in honor of the Emperor of India, George V.
Okay.
Pardon?
Jolly.
Yes. So, and it was similar to the Kingsway in London, which was opened up in 1905. And after independence, this road was just translated and given a Hindi name, Rajpath, which again meant Kingsway. It was rather a translation than renaming. And the Kartavya pathway, the path of duty, it motivates every Indian, irrespective of their caste, creed, and religion. And it invokes a sense of patriotism and duty towards the nation. I salute Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
But what about the government's duty towards the people, as Tavleen Singh pointed out? Isn't that more important fundamentally?
Well, you see, 543 member of parliaments are doing their duty, whether they belong to one section or whether they belong to another section, like the media is doing by getting such debates in the public domain. And I congratulate NDTV and you for bringing this issue to the public domain. Is it wrong that the Grand Canopy, which had earlier the statue of the Emperor of India, George V, which is going to be soon replaced with a 28-feet idol of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose on 8th of September. Will Tavleen
That's actually not what I'm asking. I'm asking because the Prime Minister had said earlier this year that emphasizing so much on our fundamental rights had weakened us as a country. Is that what has happened? Have are our rights to liberty, equality, our freedom, are they not sacrosanct? Isn't that something the government's duty towards us as citizens? It's not a favor to us. It is what the government is supposed to do.
I think the government of the day or the governments in the respective states in Republic of India are certainly doing their duties in the right direction, for which the people of India have elected them, irrespective of which party is in power in which state. And people have a right to question. You have the constitutional authorities, you have the constitutional courts, you have a mandate every 5 years to weed out unperforming politicians or the people who are in saddle of power.
So you're saying this is unnecessarily being blown up.
Decision is not right.
Okay, you're saying this is being unnecessarily blown out of proportion. Shama Mohammed of the Congress, is that the case? Is the opposition seeing too much into this? Do you not welcome India shedding a colonial, its colonial hangover? Have we got Shama or have we lost her?
Yeah, I'm here.
I can see her. Sorry. Yeah. The sort of occupational hazards of online TV.
Yeah, I'm a bad connection here. That's why. Yeah, so Nidhi, a couple of points. First and foremost, this 20,000 crore Central Vista project, which was started during the COVID times. Can you imagine, to build Parliament, to build a house for the Prime Minister, to build a new secretariat? I want to know what is the need for it when Half of the population does not have jobs. You know, the situation was quite bad. Many of them who had jobs, 50% salary cut. A lot of them could not pay EMIs. A lot of them could not pay school fees. Even though it was online learning, you have to pay your school fees, a lot of children. So these things, during this time, the Prime Minister, what is his duty? What was this? He has a scheme like 20,000 crore Central Vista. What is Kartavya? His duty to his people. His duty to his people, when the petrol price per dollar, $89 a barrel today, why hasn't the petrol, why is it still 97 to 100? Why has it not gone down? What is his duty to his people? Look, the price of food and everything the mehengai has gone up. Why is he not doing anything about it? Instead, he puts 5% GST on all. This is the only country where you get 0.25% GST on diamonds, but you get 5% GST on things like dal, chawal.
So are you saying that this is a deflection from these issues?
I am saying the Prime Minister of this country is not doing his duty. He was supposed to double the farmers' income in 2022. He was supposed to give us a 5 trillion economy. He was supposed to give the youth jobs. The recent CMI report says 8% is the joblessness, and rural is 7.2, urban is 9%. What is his duty to his people? Why is he shifting it to the people? Why is he not? He promised us a lot of things in 2014. 8 years down the line, not a single promise has been kept. 100 smart cities.
Okay,
I can go on, Nidhi.
Okay.
What I'm asking Jolly Ji is, why doesn't he explain, why has he not kept his promises of all those which he had to do?
Okay,
Where
before
is
I
the
get
employment
Mr. Jolly
even
to
when
answer that, let me get Mr. Ashwini Dubey in on this. Mr. Dubey, how do you see this as a lawyer, as a citizen? How do you look at this debate?
Thank you, Nidhi ji. Nidhi ji, so far as the law is concerned, the New Delhi Municipal Council Section 231 is very well there is in place, as per which the names of any street can be changed. So the name which reflects the colonial mindset, the name which reflects that the Britishers were here not to do justice for the citizens of the country, but to make the India as a slave. The names which reflects that because the Constitution is the greatest strength of our country, which was after the Britishers left this country came into force. And the Constitution says the citizens are important, and anything which reflects the colonial mindset, that must go. And unfortunately, Nidhi ji, with due respect to you, in case of our country, even after getting the independence in 1947, the first thing that should have been brought on priority of the socio-political spectrum of the country, that should have been the history as well as the names which reflects and shows the colonial mindset. Let me tell you in another way. The Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court Chief Justice, while speaking an event, said that the law which was made by the Lord Macaulay, that after the independence, that law reflects the colonial mindset, and therefore the law is required to be framed keeping in with today's scenario. One. The second, the 124A, the sedition law, which went, where the Honorable Prime Minister said that it reflects the colonial baggage. Now you have discussed about the right to fundamental rights as well as the fundamental duties. Fundamental rights definitely are there: right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. But at the same time, abide by the Indian Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. The national anthem, national flag, the one must cherish
who is not doing it?
Ideas. That is what, when the Honorable Prime Minister very well tried to historically correct one thing, tried to change the name of Rajpath to Kartavya Path. So why too much hue and cry when it is legally correct, it is historically correct, and with the mindset of colonial baggage, which must have gone in 1947 itself. One wrong is being corrected in 2022. Why so much hue and cry?
Actually, the debate today,
No.
I mean, you want to change your name, honestly, go ahead and change your name. I'm asking a bigger question about the narrative being shifted that the onus becomes on citizens to do their duty towards the country, and less about the fact that as citizens we have fundamental rights which I think a lot of citizens don't even appreciate or are aware of. We don't speak enough of civil rights in this country. Tavleen Singh, would you agree with that? Is that the fundamental problem, that even as the world's largest democracy, that we don't perhaps understand what we have? Look at our neighbors. I mean, we're living in a neighborhood of authoritarian regimes all around us. Perhaps we don't appreciate what we have.
Well, we certainly do appreciate that we have a democracy, but when you start talking about the duties of citizens as being more important than the rights they have, at a time when the politicians, the people we elect, are not exactly doing their duty to us. Do you know, the most important asset other than our democracy is our human, the demographic dividend, as we call it. And we haven't been able, so many years after independence, to give our people those basic rights to, you know, to livelihood, to water, to just to be able to become responsible citizens. You cannot expect people who live in slums without basic amenities to suddenly start thinking of their duties. They haven't got the time. So I think it's really very worrying when you start emphasizing what we should be doing for this country when the people who represent us are not fulfilling their duties. So if Kartavya Path is going to be a reminder to those MPs sitting at the top of Raisina Hill that they haven't done their duties, that they are negligent, and if the government that sits up there is reminded every time it drives up, well then, you know, it's not a bad idea. But by the way, Mr. Jolly, you've got it all wrong. It's not Rajpath, it's Rajpath. And Janpath was changed from Queensway. That was a discussion that's over. So I don't know what we're doing this for, unless it's to remind our politicians, our political leaders of their duties. Because actually Rajpath does not mean King's Way. It means the government's way. It leads to the seat of government.
Rajpath. Mr. Jolly?
I did expect that you would speak as an eminent journalist, and the interpretation what you're giving of Rajpath is...
What about Janpath then? It's not Queensway.
If you can't correlate Rajpath to the Kingsway, and you're talking about
not a translation of Kingsway.
The Prime Minister
Eminent
or the government
politician, it is not
you have been a
translation
journalist
of
in India for the last 60 years. You are required
What are you talking
to
about?
into your own rights.
Are you talking
as
about?
a journalist, you have done justice with your stories of the day. I'm not going to remind you, but the moment someone reminds anyone, whether it is a journalist or a politician or a layman or a serviceman,
I'm sorry, I don't follow you. I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe can I come in?
One second,
Maybe
Mr.
can I
Jolly,
just
can Mr. Jolly, what exactly, sorry, 1 second, let him speak. What exactly are you trying to say, Mr. Jolly?
Of duty toward the nation.
No, sorry.
Can I speak, Nidhi?
1 second, Shama Mohammed, just 1 second. Mr. Jolly, are you trying to say that it's okay, I mean, it's okay to emphasize the duty of citizens over the duty of the government towards citizens?
You see, the duties of the citizen and the duties of the government are all synonymous. They are not, you cannot differentiate between the two. The duty of the government is foremost, but the duty of the citizens to their surroundings. What Prime Minister did wrong was when he said Safai Abhiyan. Will you say only the government will invoke, or Tavleen will also take a broom and clear up the pathway in front of her house wherever in the Lutheran Delhi she is living? I wish to ask her.
I don't think she lives in Lutheran Delhi.
Can I come in here?
Opened up 50 crores bank accounts of the poor people after coming over to power in 2014.
What is your point? Why don't you come to the
Has
point?
BJP done any wrong? Will she again question that? Beti Bachao,
I'm
Beti
just trying to
Padhao.
understand what you're
That
trying to
again,
say.
Okay,
wrong
1 second.
notion.
Can I come in, Nidhi, please? Can I come in?
Shama Mohammed, just give me a second. 1 second. Mr. Jolly, Shama Mohammed has a question for you.
Mr.
Shama-
Jolly, Mr.
Yeah,
Jolly,
yes.
Mr. Jolly, I heard the other gentleman say subservient to, we are all being, it was the colonial subservience. Now everybody out here in your party is subservient to Mr. Modi. Why don't you respond to that? Under your government, we took out 27 crore people out of poverty. You
This
took back
Congress
23
party
crore people back to poverty. I'm
you
asking
have
you,
been
what are you
subservient
doing? You
to
cannot,
the-
you
to the
cannot,
era
you are subservient
and
to
to the
Modi.
legacy
And
of the
you
Italian
cannot,
mafia,
you have to
to
work.
Rahul Gandhi,
You
to Sohini Gandhi,
you have to,
and Indira
you have
Gandhi.
to Nidhi? Why haven't you got people out of? Where are you going to give jobs?
Don't preach
What has
us.
happened to the
All right,
farmers?
guys, I'm afraid
From a Congress party
I haven't had to outshout anyone in a long time, but we're all shouting over each other. Let's not do that because no one can hear each other. Let's just take a deep breath. We've got Mr. Pavan Verma joining us. He's of course a former diplomat and author and a keen commentator of our times. Pavan Verma, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say on this. This whole emphasis on duties of citizens over our fundamental rights. It's also interesting, don't you think, politically, that the Prime Minister is talking about tapasya, about sacrifice, that citizens have to do for the country now for the next 25 years. It's a very interesting political narrative that he's creating as well.
Nidhi, my view is that changing names of roads is not inherently wrong. We've had a colonial past and no names are fossilized in permanency. You can't remain a prisoner of the past. But sometimes I feel that names are changed more for the sake of it and for stamping your own authority on what you believe is the capital of India. So now Rajpath was not done by the British. It was an independent India which chose Rajpath and Janpath as names which represent the aspirations of an independent India. Now from there you change it to Kartavya Path. Now it's okay, it's your choice, but I ask you, by changing a major, probably the most principal avenue in this country to Kartavya Path, are you saying that we will draw attentions to the duties of our citizens, but those duties finesse or are more important than what the government can do for the people or the politicians can do for the people or the system can do for the people?
What it should be doing for the people.
So I believe that much of this is unnecessary. If there was the main boulevard from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate, which was named by the British, called Kingsway, it's correct to change it. Queensway, it's correct to change it. Having changed it, the BJP wants to put its own impress on history, and it appears to my mind to be a totally unnecessary change. And therefore you question its political motivations.
And what do you think the political motivations are?
The question today is, why are we not focusing on the issues of the day? And just name changing is not going to do that. Diverting.
Pavan Verma, do you see it the same way what Shama is saying, that it deflects? Or is there a bigger message here? Again, I come to that point. Is Mr. Modi laying the template for the next 25 years on how the BJP, because isn't this very much the RSS template? Duties towards organization, towards country, as opposed to, your own rights as citizens.
I do not discount the fact that citizens have rights and they have duties. I question the need to try and impose that where it's totally unnecessary for a road which has been accepted for what it was named in an independent India as Rajpath. So it may be part of a deeper political agenda. I don't want to make an accusation for the sake of it. At the same time, you ask yourself, there are certain changes which are being named of cities, etc., which are definitely part of a political agenda. But some of them are inexplicable to me.
True. And as I wrap up the program, one is reminded that the Congress also made a lot of changes to names over the years. Many of them were, named after the family. But today, there is an uproar about the BJP changing names. But like I said, this is not about changing names more than it is about the larger political messaging behind it. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.